I'm trying to go from beginner to pro drifter in just 30 days.
Nice!
In this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly what I'm doing each day of my second week of practice to get me closer to that goal. By the end of the 30 days, I should be able to get a clean tandem with a pro drifter. On day 8, I tried a new track, which is possibly the hardest track I could have picked. I picked this track because I just wanted to switch it up, and it's also a track that's on the East Coast. But even though it was so hard, I wanted to get at least one decent run before the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
By some miracle, I was able to get past the wall with a decent wall ride in just a few tries.
Very nice.
But I was quickly gonna find out how difficult this wall ride is to hit consistently. I was still determined to getting a solid run, but I don't know why, even though it was only my first day on this track, I was still trying to get this wall perfectly. I should have started off by not trying to get so close.
I don't know why I oversteer so easily on this part.
Another major problem I was having with this track was slowing down enough to hit the second and third outer zones without going into the bank or oversteering. And you can see even over here while I'm really trying to slow down, I still slightly hit the bank, and that instantly makes me oversteer. And the third major issue I was having with this track is the insane amount of wobble I would get transitioning from the bank over to the flat.
It's like, what the heck, that bank, dude.
So what I have to address with this track is getting the wall ride more consistent, eliminating the wobble going from bank to flat, and figuring out how to reduce my speed going into the second and third outer zones. With those three things, I can get this track a lot more consistently. But even just for being my first day, I was able to get a decent run at the end of the day.
Nice, nice, nice. Oh, nice. Jeez.
On day 9, I wanted to fix my biggest issue, which was transitioning from bank to flat. I got into my practice session and my wall rides felt pretty decent right off the bat. But geez, this bank to flat was stressing me out. The amount of wobble I was getting every single time I would hit it was so annoying. I was doing a lot more level braking today on the wall ride to stay on angle, and that was giving me good results. But as soon as I would hit the wall ride, it would either straighten me out or just throw me off and make me oversteer instantly. I knew I had to change something in my run if I wanted to fix this, so I tried something new. I tried holding my throttle more on the transition.
Keep the throttle, keep the throttle, keep the throttle. The bank works out way better when I keep the throttle on.
But by fixing this problem, I didn't realize I was going to make another problem even worse. My transition from bank to flat, although still a little bit wobbly, was getting a lot more consistent.
Having too much speed.
But by holding the throttle, it was giving me even more speed, carrying into the second and third outer zones, which was pushing me even further into the bank.
Just carrying way too much speed. I need to figure out how to slow down on that part, man.
So on day 10, I tried something completely new and I adjusted my suspension. Before I could even attempt fixing the speed issue on the second outer zone, I knew I had to get this bank to flat way smoother, or else it would only create more problems and create bad habits down the line as I continue practicing in this track.
That bounce really kills it, man.
And when I went on replay mode, I noticed the suspension was becoming very unstable in the transition. So I followed this viewer's advice and I softened my suspension by turning the bump down. I wasn't sure exactly how much to turn it down, so I did a few notches just to test it out, and it actually worked out better than I expected. This was only my first run after changing the suspension settings, and even though it still wobbled quite a bit, it didn't throw the car completely off. And this let me continue drifting the rest of the track, and it actually ended up being one of my cleaner runs so far.
Dude, on the first shot, what the heck?
On day 11, I was determined to understand this track. So I read through all the comments of viewers giving me advice, and 4 tips kept getting mentioned over and over. The first one was to transition later to minimize throwing off the suspension. The second tip is to left a brake on the transition to help me get a little bit more angle and also slow me down. Third is to clutch kick out of that inner zone to set me up nicely for the outer zone. And lastly, if I'm still going a little bit too fast, I can pull the handbrake and that should slow me down. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to complete the full track on this day, but I was able to understand this track a lot better so that I could come back the next day with a lot more confidence. And then this is just a random clip that I got with the most absurd wall ride of all time. I thought it was pretty funny. On day 12, I just wanted a clean run and I finally did it. I put all the pieces together that I was practicing the previous days and just locked in. I'm really happy with this entry, getting pretty close to the wall. I just wish the smoke wasn't on because it's very distracting. But I was able to push through that tough transition and give it a really hard clutch kick to get me into the outer zone. I slightly poked into that bank, but thankfully I didn't spin out, and actually made it to that next zone super cleanly. At this point, I just didn't want to choke up and throw the whole run away. I knew for this last inner zone, I needed to keep my wheel speed low so I could actually stay on the inside of the track. And it felt so rewarding finishing the track. And since I got the run I wanted, on day 13 I just wanted to switch it up a little bit. So I brought a car that I hadn't driven in months into one of the tracks that I'd been practicing on, Bikernieki. And this is the BMW M3 by Kunos, and although it's tuned for drifting and it has a decent amount of power, it's way less than the VDC cars. So it was a nice change of pace to see how much of the skills I had already learned I could apply into these lower horsepower cars. But I quickly realized I had to push this car a lot harder than the other one.
Okay.
That's if I wanted to complete the whole track and not bog down halfway through it. The more runs I did, the further into the track I was able to get.
A lot of left for braking.
But as I would progress, I would also find out the places that I was just not carrying enough power.
That was close.
I was starting to consistently get all the way to the wall, and on this run I finally carried enough power to transition nicely into it. But of course everything was going too smooth, so I choked up and completely threw the run. Sometimes I just can't with myself, bruh. But I saw that it was possible to actually drift a whole pro track even with a low horsepower car, so I gave it another try.
Nice.
And on day 14, I had a big realization that helped me improve my wall rides instantly. I noticed that my wall rides were really inconsistent, almost random. I would either get them super clean or just completely crash into the wall. And I noticed I was doing something weird every single time I would approach the wall, so I wanted to test and see if this is what was messing me up.
Okay.
I noticed that no matter what, every single time I would go up to the wall, I would hesitate like crazy and just do a ton of corrections. And this was mostly with the pedals.
That's how it is.
So what I did instead was fully commit into the wall. As soon as I would get next to that wall, I would go on my throttle and keep my angle without thinking that I was going to run into the wall. And just with this simple mindset shift of just committing, I completely changed my wall rides.
Nice.
If you enjoyed this video, it would be awesome if you subscribed. And check out the video on week 1 where I started practicing on this track.